Hi, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, fan of a number of different Japanese bands. I want to talk about two of them today, two of my favorites, who have both had massive years. This is the end of 2023 as I'm making this. And I want to talk about BABYMETAL and Atarashii Gakko. And it's hard to get a sense of exactly how big this year has been for both of these groups. And I think, let's take them separately. BABYMETAL obviously have been around longer. They formed back in 2010, although they weren't fully active right away. And in that time, they've produced now 4 albums. But I think it's interesting to look at how those albums came out. The first album came out in 2014. The second album, Metal Resistance, in 2016. Metal Galaxy came out in 2019. This year, 2023, the other one came out. And there were a couple of singles that were released late last year. But that's a 4-year gap between albums. And a lot has happened in between those two moments. Of course, what fans continue to talk about is the departure of Yui, which happened back in 2018. That's a long time ago at this point. People are still talking about it. But I think this year we finally sort of officially moved on. And I think the combination of Yui leaving and the pandemic created this strange hiatus, which the band officially embraced with those 10 Budokan shows and the ceiling of the band, which meant that for a couple of years they were doing literally nothing. No touring, no recording. They've pretty much vanished. There was some little bits of things here and there that came out and some teasing about what might happen in the future. But there was, I think, a sense amongst the fans, particularly, that we didn't know if they were done. And there was a lot of anxiety and paranoia about the future of the group and whether it had simply run its course. And as I say, 4 years is a long time between albums. So late last year, we started hearing new music. Hey, this is AJ Hartley, novelist, Shakespeare professor, BABYMETAL fan, and we have a new song. This is the second song off the Other One concept album digital release thing, and this song is called Monochrome, and I haven't actually listened to it yet. And then we started getting whispers of new performances. And we finally get the new album, The Other One, this year. We finally get, in these 2 massive shows in Japan, the closure that we've been waiting for a long time as far as Yui is concerned.
Here and now, a new BABYMETAL has been summoned by the god of metal. The Fox God. Vocal and dance. Sue Metal. Scream and dance. Moa Metal. stage and journey
official designation of Momoko as the third member of BABYMETAL. Obviously, she had been one of the most frequent of the Avengers in the performances in the years since Yui left, but she had never been an official member of the band until this year. That, I think, was a huge shot in the arm, not just for the band, but for the fan base. Of course, not everybody's happy about it. But I think most of us felt like the position was, she had earned that position, and it meant the band was making a constructive step forward. Now, of course, she is not overtly involved in the recording of the Other One album, but in the subsequent months she got to perform with them, because now BABYMETAL back on the road. First we have the Sabaton tour in Europe, and then we have a co-headline tour in the US with Deathclock, and now more shows again in Europe, and it feels like BABYMETAL are once more sort of gearing up after this long, slow period in which very little was happening, and it seemed like they were in some sort of existential crisis as to what exactly they were going to do. And I think that has become clearer since some of the interviews have come out recently, where they were clearly talking about this. They were clearly saying, do we want to keep going? And I like the fact that they have the conversation. I like the fact that having made the decision to move forward, that there's a sense of the band taking more control of what they're doing and deciding to elevate and progress. So yeah, huge year, transitional year, and a year that I think creates the possibility of a lot more to come in the future. I mean, who knows how long they will go, but it feels like we're at a new beginning. And we're seeing, I saw them in Atlanta, and obviously BABYMETAL can do the pageantry, the huge, stylized, gravitas-laden performances, particularly in Japan. But what we saw on this tour was a raising of their game, I think, as performers, as consummate singers, dancers, perfectly integrated with the band, and content on stage. And I think one of the great things about seeing Momoko with them is how comfortable they seem, how much they seem to be enjoying themselves, how much they seem to relish being back in the public eye. And I think that's got to look good for the years to come. Hopefully there'll be a lot more stuff and a continued evolution. We've heard one new song, not from the Other One, Metali, which is a collaboration with Tom Morello, which I don't think anybody saw coming, and which simultaneously returns to some of their roots in songs like Megitsune and Papaya, but also elevates the energy and the forcefulness and the playfulness and the goofiness, centers Momoko in the nice little kabuki moment in the middle of the song, and seems to say, yeah, we're having a great time. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. but we know who we are and we know what we're doing. And that, I think, is really exciting. There are a couple of other collaborations as well. But in terms of their own material, I'm really optimistic that Metalli represents new work, a new album, which hopefully we'll get maybe next year. Maybe we won't have to wait till 2028 for it, at least. The other band who's had a fantastic year is Atarashii Gakko. In some ways, you could see it coming. And in other ways, I think it's been very surprising. And one of the reasons that it's been very surprising is that the song that launched them this year was Otonna Buru, which was recorded years ago, right? I mean, my little video talking about it, I made 3 years ago.
Otonna Buru.
When I was first listening, I was listening to the first two albums. So I was watching this process happen in real time. And at the time, it felt like I'd make these little videos about Atarashii Gakko and they were mostly ignored. And I felt like I was one of a very, very small number of people outside Japan who were interested in these guys. And to be honest, it wasn't clear to me that they had a huge following in Japan. When we saw live concert footage from them, they were playing very small venues and they were not tapping into a mainstream audience. Now, somewhere late last year, the beginning of this year, that changed. And it changed in part because of, I don't really know why, but TikTok discovered the dance, which they had been doing for 3 years, to Otonna Buru. The little head bob thing, suddenly that became a thing that people were copying. And it launched them in altogether new ways, particularly in Japan, but also outside Japan. It led to an absolutely astonishing performance on the first take. Which further increased their visibility and the extent to which people were taking them seriously. They had also, as of 2 years ago, had done a couple of shows outside Japan. In the US, they'd done the Head in the Clouds festival, but they hadn't been doing headline events. And somewhat out of the blue, late in the summer, I think, it was announced that they were going to be doing a limited US tour, a headline tour. And I don't think anybody saw that coming. I don't think they expected it to sell out and to be massively successful. I don't think people realized, at the beginning of the year that they would have a huge Tokyo headline show of their own. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a second. Or that they would wind out the year, making a guest appearance on the Kohaku New Year's show, which is a huge marker of success in Japan. That they would be receiving awards from GQ as Breakout Man of the Year. And getting a lot of TV attention, doing a lot of commercials, but also getting a lot of news coverage. NHK just did a piece on them.
I'm Shibuya Aki in Tokyo. People around the world seem to be fascinated with Japan's rich and diverse culture, from anime and video games to sushi and technology. But I have to say, that is just the tip of the iceberg. Atarashii Gakko is on a mission to showcase aspects of Japan you would have to be here to experience.
初の世界ワンマンツアーどうですか？
お客さんの熱量に圧倒されております。
They're suddenly the flavor of the month. And it's weird that they've been around as long as they have and largely below the radar. So, I think that their partnership with 88 Rising certainly has helped to propel them into the contemporary foreign market. There's also been a shift somewhat in their music, moving a little bit away from this jazzier 80s, 70s, 80s pop sound that they were doing before, particularly in their work with HZM, and moving towards a more English-heavy and hip-hop driven, high-energy dance performance music. Now, it's interesting that, having seen them on the US tour, and I have reviews of both my attendance of the Baby Metal show in Atlanta and my attendance of the Washington, D.C. Atarashii Gakko show on this channel, if you haven't already seen them. And the US tour was very new song heavy, which made it quite different from the big Tokyo show that they did earlier in the year. Which not only featured more of the old material from the first couple of albums, but also went out of its way to directly involve HZM, the pianist and jazz composer who they had worked with, as a guest in their show, which I thought was fantastic. I was really excited about it. It did lead to a couple of moments where the performance was a little bit lifeless because they went with lower key songs, and there's a moment in which Canon and Rin are sort of left on stage on some balcony at the top doing a series of sort of little poses and smiling and singing by themselves, and it's kind of a low energy moment within the show. Pretty and nice in some ways, but I can understand why they opted not to do that on the US tour. That Tokyo show was a much bigger, much splashier event and incorporated all kinds of little different things. And it has sort of a 3-act structure. They start off with a lot more of the early stuff. They do sort of an American block where they come on dressed in the clothes that they were wearing for the Pineapple Kryptonite music video. And they center on material from that period, from the work that they did with Money Mark from Beastie Boys. And it's the Snack Time EP material. And then they come back to some of the other singles like Otonnabaru and 999, including Dancers. Cheerleaders, in that very distinctly Japanese tradition of cheerleading, where you get yelled at a lot. and it's in that stuff that they clarify, I think, a shift which we're seeing particularly also in the last year or so. They always wear the school uniform, and they talk about the school uniform as being their sort of battle armor. But I had wondered in the past, as they're now in their 20s, at what point they leave the school uniform behind. But they have clarified recently the idea that their representation of youth, seishun, Japanese youth culture, has become more inclusive and less age specific. I think when they started out, when they were talking about Japanese youth culture, they meant that literally in terms of biological age. And a lot of the stuff that they were talking about and a lot of the stuff that they were singing about was middle and high school specific. That is shifting slowly out of their repertoire. And their definition of seishun, the definition of youthfulness, is much more about being sort of young at heart and finding one's individuality, standing out, as they're often saying, and embracing a version of life in which you live to the fullest in the moment, and you don't get bogged down with those old-fashioned traditional ideas about what adulthood and responsibility are supposed to mean. But it's deliberately constructed as an approach to the world that includes all people, regardless of age and the kind of work that they do, their identities, their gender, and so on. And I think that this is quite deliberate, and it suggests a kind of ambassadorial movement which uses elements of Japanese culture while simultaneously kind of redefining them in their own image, which I really like. And I think it's really exciting to watch. And it's fascinating to me to see the way that this year has transformed them and created, all kinds of new possibilities. Will they be, last night they were on Jimmy Kimmel. Who saw that coming?
Making their U.S. television debut with the song Tokyo Calling, Atarashii Gakko.
Which meant that I had to watch an hour of the most bland and uninteresting TV conversation that I have seen in a very long time in order to get to a quick studio performance of Tokyo Calling, which was pretty great. And the audience was into it. But the other thing, that I was going to say about that Japanese show, my favorite moment in that concert, and I don't even know how much of this I can show because I'm sure it's going to get yanked for copyright infringement, but my favorite moment is when everything fell apart. They were transitioning from 999, which involved them going out into the audience insofar as you can go into the audience in the Japanese show, in one of these big arena shows where everybody's sort of kept penned and separate, and there's huge gaps between the stage and the audience, which feels sort of weirdly disconnecting. But there's a moment where they go out into the audience, they get up into the balconies and they get individual spotlights and they sing, and they finish 999 and then they go back to the stage and then they transition into the amped up remix of Pineapple Kryptonite, where they get the long coats and they do that sort of high energy formation dance. And the wheels came off. It's not entirely clear what happened, but at the moment that they were supposed to start, they clearly were not ready. I don't know if they weren't in the right position or if it was a wardrobe issue. I suspect it was a wardrobe issue. And there's something really fantastic about the way that anything could have happened and they could have just sort of muddled through and just gone along with it and got through the song and moved on to the next. But Suzuka just stops everything and just says, no, stop it. Absolutely, absolutely. Damn it, zettai, absolutely not.
私たちの一番楽しいとこなの。みんなこれ待ってたでしょ。もう一回やり直すから。しっかり四つ打ちに乗ってくれるか。絶対ここみんなで気持ちよくなるって想像して一番気持ちよくなってたんだから。みじちゃん、りんちゃんもこっちおいて。
And she says, this is one of the most fun parts of the show, and we're going to do it, and we're going to do it right. And she walks everything back, and the group take up their positions from the end of 999. It's very theatrical. It's like watching a rehearsal where you move back a scene and get everybody in position and then move forward and do it. And it's wonderful and it's brilliant, and I think the audience appreciated it.
時間を巻き戻しちゃおうかしら。どこに行った？あいつらどこ行った？客席いたけどどこ行った？せーの、いないいないいないいないいないばー。ここだー。さっきよりももっと叩け！手のひら叩け！もっと！
But what's particularly striking is something that I have said before about them, that they are their own bosses. And for people this young playing in a venue that size, to just put the brakes on and say, stop, start over. We're not doing it like this. We're going back. We're going to do it the way we want to do it. It's amazing. And I love it. I just love it. And I think that this is part of what people are falling in love with. That it's not, okay, yes, they're cute and they're self-possessed and so on, and they have high energy and they're singing some good songs and so on. But it's also this sense of being themselves, of their forthrightness of their personality, and the way that that is being allowed to shape who and what they are, coming up with their own dance and their own version of what they want to be and what they're interested in and how they're going to move forward. And I think it's really exciting. And I hope that the world and Japan doesn't think of them simply as a sort of flash in the pan, as a kind of gimmick that suddenly became viral and then, like a lot of viral things, will vanish. I hope that they're able to use the current tour that they've been on, the high visibility in Japanese TV over the next few months, to generate new music, new material, and to expand their fan base so that we will be watching them for years to come, because I can't wait to get back to another Atarashii Gakko show. And that's all I'm going to say. So a great year for both bands. And, I really think that this is a sign of good things to come, and I'm excited about it. And that's all I'm going to say. As ever, please like, comment, subscribe, check out my Patreon page, check out my merchandise. Thank you to my patrons. Check out my books. Of course, in this case, Hideki Smith's Demon Queller, which references Baby Metal, and a copy of which I was able to give to Atarashii Gakko, which you will know if you've seen my video of the DC show. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks.